Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. It means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week is off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and fired up that you're hanging out with us here. We got plenty to do over the next 2 hours. We're going to have Dr. Jeremy Burnham in our bi-weekly auctioneer injury segment. We'll talk to him coming up at the end of hour number 1. LSU baseball goes to Austin and loses 2 out of 3. LSU's women's basketball team has a big game coming up in 4 hours. I've got some thoughts on spring football that I watched on Saturday. March Madness, we're down to 16. Like, there's just tons and tons and tons. This is the most content-filled portion of the Baton Rouge sports calendar, in my opinion. So we'll get to a lot of it over the next 2 hours. Again, we appreciate you hanging out with us. We'll start things the way we start every single day. That's with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
It's funny how quickly things change over the course of a 56-game baseball season, over the course of a 3-game baseball weekend. There was a point there in the 4th inning of Game 2 where I'm looking at LSU and I'm going, this is probably the best team in the country. Because on Friday, Cade Anderson goes out there, 6 great innings. Zach Cowan comes in, absolutely slams the door. LSU on Friday scored in 3 different innings, but had at least one base runner in every inning. And every hitter in the starting 9 got on base. They hit 13 hits, convincingly won Game 1 against Jared Spencer and a good Texas team on the road. And then you come out on Saturday, and Anthony Ianson hangs 3 zeros to start, and then LSU scores 2 in the 4th, gets 3 more in the 5th. And you're up 5-2, and it's like, they're in control again. The offense is humming. Pitching's been good. Defense is great. You're on the road. You're 4-0 in the league. Like, this is awesome. And then over the course of the next 14 innings, LSU got outscored 15-4 and dropped the series. And you went from, this is the best team in the country, which is what I was saying Saturday evening. And then you're looking up on Sunday and everybody's going, this team's got no bullpen. They're cooked. Like, that's how quick it can change. And we'll talk about all of it. I've got an in-depth piece up at LouisianaSports.net right now called Around the Horn. It dives really deeply into pitching. And I'll kind of get into it right now from a numbers perspective. Like, if you put the totality of the weekend together, LSU's walk totals were not awful. Like, LSU did not issue a walk on Friday, and LSU only issued 2 walks on Sunday. Now, Saturday, far too many, 7, and that was a big deal. But in 2 of the games, walks weren't really an issue. But command is an issue for a lot of pitchers on this staff, and it goes far deeper than just walking guys. And I'll illustrate what I'm talking about here. Like, just throwing strike 1 is such a big deal. And a lot of guys on this staff are struggling to do that. Like, you bring Connor Ware in for Anthony Ianson, and he immediately falls behind 1-0. Then he throws a wild pitch. Then he walks the only guy he sees. So he fell behind the only guy he saw, and he walked him. And then you hand the ball to William Schmidt. And William Schmidt is a young pitcher with a ton of talent that doesn't have great command right now. And so when that flares, this is the result. And if you look closely at what allowed William Schmidt to go out there and get knocked around, it's the fact that he was constantly pitching from behind. Like, his line is bad. A third of an inning, 2 hits and a run, 2 walks. But dive deeper. He gives up a home run on a 3-1 fastball right down the middle. He gives up a double on a 2-1 pitch that catches a ton of the plate. Then he goes 3-1 to the next two hitters and walks them. So that's a 3-1 homer, 2-1 double, 3-1 walk, 3-1 walk. He's pitching. Nobody can get outs like that. I don't care how good your stuff is. 95, 97, big spin rate on the breaking ball, three-pitch mix. You cannot get people out if you cannot get ahead. And you look at the immense talent on this staff, guys like William Schmidt, like it's very evident that Jacob Myers is a really talented dude. He faced 3 hitters on Saturday and fell behind 1-0 to all 3 of them. I mean, you're never going to get anybody out doing that, and he didn't. Conversely, you've got a guy on this staff that doesn't have the immense talent or size or physicality that some of the others do. He doesn't look like Chase Shores. He doesn't look like William Schmidt. Doesn't look like Maverick Rizzi. Doesn't throw as hard as Cade Anderson. And, of course, I'm talking about Zach Cowan. But Zach Cowan faced 11 hitters on Friday. He faced 11 hitters. 10 of the 11 hitters that Zach Cowan faced got to a 2-strike count. 10 of 11. Guess how many went to 3 balls? 1 of 11. Now, Zach Cowan's got a really good changeup, and he does throw 91 miles an hour, and he sometimes throws a little slider. But he throws strikes. Cade Anderson got through 6 great innings, and he gave up 7 hits in 6 innings. But he didn't walk anybody. You got to earn everything. And Texas couldn't earn very much. Against 2 guys that refused to put them on base, didn't walk anybody, Texas only scored 2 runs on Friday. You turn around on Saturday, and you walk 7 guys, well, Texas scores 11 runs. And Shores only walked 2 guys on Sunday, but both of them scored. It's a command issue. And that can get better. Like, I'm not telling you that Jacob Myers is going to become like a huge strike thrower. He's literally led the nation in walks for 2 years in a row. So that's kind of what he is at this point. But some of these guys with reps, with handling nerves a little bit better once they've been out there, can develop and get better over the course of the next 8 weeks. Keep in mind, LSU's pitching staff looked terrible at this point in 2023 and terrible at this point in 2024. And guys stepped up. Ty Floyd, Riley Cooper, Griffin Herring, Gavin Guidry, Nate Ackenhausen, Christian Little last year. Like, guys made improvements as the season went on. And you're going to have to get that. Because right now, your pitching staff is a weakness beyond Anderson and Cowan and Evans, who all 3 were great over the weekend. And that's a great place to start. To have 3 guys with that kind of stuff that you can really count on is a very good place to start. You've got to build on it. Here's one thing that I would like to see. I would like to see Anthony Ianson get a little bit longer leash. I know that he gives up hits, and his batting average against an SEC play is .333. I get it. Like, that's a bad number. But he does throw it over the plate, and I thought could have given you more length on Saturday. He went 78 pitches in his 4 1/3, which is a lot over 4 1/3. But he had 6 strikeouts and only 2 walks. You had Ballou coming up. That's why they went to Ware. He ended up walking him, and then you wanted to play matchups, and you went to Schmidt, and he goes to Homer. I understand all the moves, but one thing to help your bullpen is to have your starters go deep. And I think that there were 2-4 more outs in Ianson. At least I can trust him to throw it over the plate. And you started parading guys out there that couldn't. Because Ware walked a guy and Schmidt walked 2 guys. I mean, Benj, to his credit, came in and slowed the bleeding down a little bit. But you look at what he did, and it was the strike throwing too. Benj got ahead of 6 of the 8 hitters that he faced, including the first 4, and he got them all out. The last 2 men he faced got hits. He started both of them 1-0. If it sounds really simple, like, man, he's really boiling this down to one little thing, like, it kind of is. You've got to throw it over the plate. Here's the little secret here. This is an offensive sport. Teams score runs. I'm not asking you, as a pitching staff, to hold everybody to 2 or 3 runs. LSU is going to win a lot of games when the opponent scores 5. But you can't walk 7 guys on Saturday and then allow those guys to come home. Those are gift wrapped. So LSU is closer to being good on the mound than you might realize because it looks bad. But the fact of the matter is that with these bats and these balls, and as strong as college hitters are, like they're going to score runs. The best teams in the country bash the baseball. LSU 2 years ago, Florida hit a ton of home runs that year. Tennessee did last year as well. A&M had Montgomery and Laviolette and Grahovic, and they scored a ton. It's an offensive sport. It's not like it was when Aaron Nola was pitching and you had to win games 3-1 because they had the BB core bats out there. This is an offensive sport with all the teams that matter, which is basically the SEC and the ACC. So you don't have to have ERAs of 1.86 and a Skeens-like strikeout to walk ratio, but you've got to make teams earn it. And you can't give them base runners so that all of a sudden those big swings are even bigger because you've gift-wrapped runs. And Texas, as we talked about on Friday, has a program built via Jim Schlossnagle on taking pitches, driving pitch counts up, and getting pitchers out of the ballgame. And they did that to Anthony Ianson, who had to throw 78 pitches to get 13 outs, and Chase Shores, who had to throw 96 pitches to get 12 outs. That's Texas's playbook. Texas is a good team. And LSU went there and really controlled the action for the first 14 innings and then ceded control for the last 15 innings. And it stinks to lose a series. It stinks to lose a weekend. But you're closer than you might think. LSU needs a couple of these guys to step up. If Connor Ware and William Schmidt and Maverick Rizzi and Jacob Myers are not very effective pitchers, and Gavin Guidry doesn't return from this lingering injury, LSU's in a lot of trouble. But if Anderson continues to throw it like he's throwing it, and Cowan throws it like he's throwing it, and Evans throws it like he's throwing it, and Ware or Schmidt and Rizzi really take a next step, you've got pitching. You've got some. But they've got to be better than they were against Missouri, and they've got to be better than they were against Texas. The good news is that it's March. It is March. So two things can be true. LSU is not pitching well enough right now, and they can develop over time. You can choose whether or not you want to believe in that development, but it's inarguable that it's possible, and they just need to pitch it better than they have. And then when they pitched it half decent yesterday in the Sunday game, the offense fell asleep. And sometimes that's going to happen. Like LSU's got a really good offense. They're going to score runs. I'm not concerned at all about the 2 runs that LSU scored on Sunday. Like there are going to be games over the course of 30 where you just don't swing the bat. That's how it works. But you still got to pitch it a little bit better. And that's what I'm looking at with this LSU team right now. Again, I've got a lot of stats and a lot of opinion over at LouisianaSports.net with Around the Horn, and we'll continue to dive into it over the course of these 2 hours. But it's important to start with the pitching, and we got to that right there. When we come back, I'll talk about a couple of managerial decisions that Jay Johnson made, some of which I was good with, some of which I did not like. We'll talk a little bit of offense as well. We'll do that when we come back on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Vaughn and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Closet space may not be something that you think about all the time. Certainly wasn't for me, but when my wife moved into the house that we were in previously and she saw the closet space, it was a bad deal. And we moved to remedy our problem. We prioritized closet space in the move, and now we're very, very happy. But you don't have to move to make that happen. Just call David Duvall. He'll come in. They can put in a brand new closet. Like that's something their licensed contractor, they're bonded, they're insured. They can make that happen. They can also take your existing space and use it a little bit more efficiently. Either is an option, but you won't know unless you have that free consultation with David and his team to start your process. They've got financing available, 18 months at 0%. That's same as cash if you qualify. Start that process again at onebathandclosets.com. It's David Vaughn, One Bath and Closets, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products right here in Baton Rouge. They can service anywhere in the state. No matter what you do, Gulf Coast Office Products has clients in your vertical market, and they know the needs and demands of tons of different verticals, whether it's banking or education, healthcare, law, like us, media company. They help us out with our printing, scanning, copying. They can do the same for you. Contact them at GCOPnet.com, GCOPnet.com. All right, some decisions that Jay Johnson made over the weekend. He's pushing a lot of buttons, y'all. It's been interesting to watch because you've got these platoons where if he starts Jake Brown or Josh Pearson, and then a left-hander comes in, he may go to Ethan Fry, and then you're moving guys around in the field. And you saw yesterday that Jared Jones ended up at third with Jake Brown at first, where he made an error. And then at times you got Fry out in right field, and then you got Pearson, maybe Brown. They're moving a lot of guys around. It's interesting to watch. So there was some stuff that Jay Johnson did this weekend that I liked, some stuff that he did that I wasn't crazy about. So we'll start to talk about some of those. There have been those that have talked about the decision to leave Zach Cowan in the game on Friday for 55 pitches. So LSU scored 4 right before Cowan came in. So they took a lead that was 8-2. It was 4-2. They moved it to 8-2. And that's when Cowan came in for the 7th inning. And theoretically, you could have gotten Cowan out after the 7th and gone for somebody else for the last 6 outs with a 6-run lead. I'm not wild about that. I was just fine leaving Cowan out there to put game 1 in a hammerlock because I understand how game 2 played out, but you still have to work off of the assumption that winning the game using 2 pitchers and then showing up on Saturday with Anthony Ianson, Connor Ware, William Schmidt, Maverick Rizzi, Connor Binge, and Kason Evans ready to go, like that's a pretty advantageous spot to be in. So I didn't have a problem with making sure that you got that first win. I can hear the other side of it, but I was perfectly fine with it at the time, and I'm perfectly fine with it now. So I'm good with that. I feel like Ianson, as I said in the last segment, deserves a little bit longer leash, and that's something that I want to look at as well. I think his length could potentially help LSU in the bullpen by eating up some more outs. One decision that I did not like that LSU made was on Sunday. It was 5-1 Texas with 2 outs and 2 on in the 6th. And so it's a 4-run game in the 6th inning, and LSU's got runners at first and third with 2 out, and they pinch hit with Ethan Fry. Now keep in mind, Fry hit 2 home runs on Tuesday. He's a big physical power bat. He's certainly got double power that could plate 2 runs. He's got home run power that could plate 3 runs. And LSU runs that double steal where the runner steals from first and stops. And you force the infielder to either go to the rundown to try to end the inning or watch the guy on third base. And you allow the runner to come in from third base. He scores to make the game 5-2, cut the lead to 3, but you end the inning with the tag out. If you're down by 1 in that spot and that run is going to tie the game, I love the play. In the 6th inning, when you're down 4 runs, to play for 1 and take the bat out of Fry's hands with 2 guys on base, I did not like that at all. I think that you got to let Ethan Fry swing the bat there. There's a reason you went to him. Now, you've also got hindsight on this. They ran that play 0-1, and Fry swung and missed on the play, so it was 0-2. So you're not in a great count there, but I would have liked to have seen. That for sure. So that's kind of the managerial side of this. Now we'll talk about the rotation and whether or not there need to be changes. And here, if you were going to make a change in the rotation, because look, Ianson and Shores in 2 SEC weeks have given up an opponent batting average, both of them, of 333. Chase Shores' opponent batting average for the year is 300. He's just not missing a ton of bats. So if I were going to make a change in the rotation, I would put Zach Cowan in the rotation. He threw 110 innings for Wofford last year. Like, the workload he'll be fine with, and he can start and he can go 7 innings. Like, that's in his repertoire. And that would move Chase Shores to the bullpen, where 2 years ago he found some real early season success. Now, I realize that Chase Shores is a draftable pitcher this year, and that may not be the thing that makes him the happiest, but I could see that happening. Personally, myself, I would run the same 3 out there in the same order this weekend. But if you're telling me that you need to make a change, I would put Cowan in the rotation and move Shores to the bullpen. Does that weaken your bullpen? Yes, it does a little bit. But could you potentially strengthen your rotation? You could. It's crazy how quickly Cowan has climbed that ascent. But when you're so steadily pumping strikes and the other guys in the staff are not, like, it really stands out. And what Cowan is doing is really impressive. I like him and Kason Evans in those extended stopper roles where both of those two guys can be called on in the 7th to come in and finish a game. Because if you look at what they did this weekend, you look at Cowan, he goes 55 pitches, and he was brilliant all the way through the end of the game. And you look at what Evans did on Sunday, and he threw a season-high 60 pitches over 3 2/3 innings. He only allowed the 1 run, but he struck out 5 and didn't walk anybody. So you've got the ability on a Friday to go to Zach Cowan in the 7th or to go to Kason Evans in the 7th or 8th. And even if you burn one of those guys for a day or two, you've still got the other one ready to go. And I like to be able to finish games like that. You need high leverage arms, but you also need better starting pitching than what you're getting. And when you consider it against Missouri, both Ianson and Shores went 3 2/3. Then Shores came out on this Sunday and went 4 innings, and Ianson only got you through 4 1/3. Like, you're not getting enough length there. And if you're looking for some more length, perhaps Cowan is the guy. I think as opposed to changing the roles of some of these guys on the mound, I think it's probably more likely to unlock something by having guys just pitch better. Because, like, a weekend and a baseball game are just a collection of outs. And no matter when Cowan pitches, you've got to pitch opposite him. Either if he starts and he goes 5 innings, somebody's got to finish the last 4. If he goes the last 4, somebody's got to throw the first 5. And so while it would appear like, oh, it's a good idea to go ahead and change the rotation, get Shores out of there, put Cowan in, like, in reality, like, Shores just needs to pitch a little bit better. Connor Ware needs to pitch a little bit better. William Schmidt needs to pitch a little bit better. That is where the next level comes from here. And right now they're not throwing it well enough. So I'm open to the discussion of changing up the rotation. It happens every year. I can't recall a year where LSU sent 3 guys out there on opening weekend and they finished the season in the same role. I'll have to go back and look at 17 to see if Walker immediately started on Sundays. I know Poche and Lang were entrenched after they had great 15s and 16s. They were out there in 17. I don't know if Walker started the first weekend or not. If he did, then they did it. But outside of that, like, that doesn't happen. There's always some tinkering that goes on, and that's happening all over the league as well. And so it's, statistically speaking, likely that LSU will make a change at some point. If you ask me, Hunt Palmer, like, what are you doing this weekend? Mississippi State at the box, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. What are you doing? I'm going with the same 3 guys in the same order. Now, here's the interesting piece to this. Because you've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, theoretically, you could throw Zach Cowan on Thursday. Say, hey, I know you hadn't been stretched out to 100, but back on Friday, you threw 55. Give me 70 to start this game on Thursday. We'll see what we need to do in the back end of the bullpen, and then we'll keep Anderson on Friday. This week it's game 2, and see how deep he can go. So if you're looking for a spot to shake up the rotation, this could be it based on the change in days. If you want to keep Anderson on his regular schedule, maybe that's something you look at. You also, I think Jay Johnson will look at what Mississippi State does, because Pico Khan is a stud at the front end of Mississippi State's rotation. He outdueled Kyson Witherspoon on Friday in a 2-1 classic up in Norman. And so you got a tough pitcher in one of those games. But there's an opportunity this week to take a look at shaking things up because the schedule moves up a day. So we'll see what Jay Johnson decides to do. I don't expect that he'll give you any information on those decisions in any kind of press conference this week. That's not his style, but it's certainly worth discussion. So we'll kind of see what LSU does as they move forward in this week. All right, Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Appreciate you hanging out with us here to get your work week started. The nasty weather kind of cleared here in Baton Rouge, but it was It was awful this morning for a good piece. We actually stayed at the Palmer house for about 20 extra minutes waiting for that storm to blow through. But hopefully everybody is staying dry, staying safe, and off to a good start this week. When we come back, LSU football was on the Ponderosa on Saturday. I got to look at them for about 2 hours. Tell you some things that I saw. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every new Genesis purchase, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles. It's as good as you're going to find in the industry. Speaking of that, safety, big priority for the folks over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Genesis, really, as a whole. You're talking about an entire line of vehicles that was given the IIHA Safety Award. Top safety pick, some of them top safety pick plus. Safety, big deal. You got perks, you got safety, you got style, comfort. It's all right there at Genesis. Go by and see them. Airline Highway at Pico, across from Women's Hospital. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Chat with Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Auctioneer coming up here in about 10 minutes. LSU spring football on Saturday. Long look for us in the media on Saturday. It was interesting. I wrote a practice report up for LouisianaSports.net. So they've got us on the balcony of the new facility now. It's like the balcony of the Players Lounge, which is very nice, by the way, as you might expect. But we're on the balcony, and we used to be able to like kind of walk the sidelines of the fields. And now you're cooped up in one spot. And for the last like 40 minutes of practice, they were doing some goal line drills and some like 2-minute stuff on the field furthest from us. So they were like 145, 150 yards away. And there was a observation tower between us and the scrimmage. And half the players had their jerseys rolled up under their shoulder pads. So like, it was some real spotty reporting from where we were with this stuff.
You got to start bringing some binoculars, huh?
I mean, so the binoculars wouldn't have even helped with the tower in the way and the players with their rolled up jerseys. So like, I feel bad because I feel like we're like we're reporting on the practice and people care about LSU football and they want to know how things are going. It's like there are portions of this practice that they are doing everything they can to make it almost impossible for us to provide quality information. And like, I feel bad for the reader at times. There's nothing I can do if they're behind an observation tower and all the DBs had their jerseys rolled up and I can't tell what number any of them are wearing. And they're 160 yards away. So I tried to be as informative as I could in my practice report for LouisianaSports.net. But one of the things that I'm starting to take away from some of these spring practices and I wanted to talk about was I feel like some of the wide receivers are really having a nice early spring. I think Chris Hilton's done amazingly well, and that is more of what we saw in the fall before he got hurt. He made a great catch over the middle over Michael Turner for a touchdown. And it's stuff like that we see, from the route running to the catches in traffic to things that are in his game now that are more complete than, oh, this dude is really fast, watch him run a go route, which he's still really good at. He's awesome at running go routes, but he's doing some things that make him a more complete receiver. And I think that is really encouraging to see. I think Chris Hilton could be really, really good in this LSU offense. I think he's a much better route runner than he was 3 years ago. I think he's got better hands than he had 3 years ago. I think he's physically stronger than he was 3 years ago. The only thing that remains to be seen is, as you know, Chris Hilton staying healthy. And if he does that, I think you're talking about a guy who's going to be a really, really productive wide receiver for LSU. I've liked Aaron Anderson's spring as well. They've gotten him involved in some stuff a little bit more down the field, as you saw at times last year. When you look at Anderson, you think of him as just a guy who is going to be a slot guy who's just going to run some little out routes and make linebackers look bad in space and make 6 and 7 yard catches. But he's doing some things down the field that I think are really good. And one guy that I've really been impressed with in this game in total is Barian Brown. He was a big time recruit. He's got great speed, and you know about the kick returns. But you've seen Barry and Brown now, like in some route running stuff, look really good. And I honestly believe that this is a case where the offense he was in was so inept that he was essentially neutered from any production. Like you couldn't get him involved because the Kentucky passing game was so archaic and so bad. And I think that there's something they can unlock in him for sure. One of the better reps that we saw on Saturday was Barry and Brown running essentially a deep post route against DJ Pickett. And Brown won off the line of scrimmage and really ran by Pickett. And the ball was just a tick underthrown. And Pickett closed on Barry and Brown. Speedster. Pickett showed some speed, closed, and knocked it away. And to me, that was good on everybody. Good for Barry and Brown for winning off the line of scrimmage and getting loose. Good for DJ Pickett to close and make a play on the ball. That's the kind of rep that you like to see. You know, if somebody just gets absolutely cooked, well, that's great for the offensive guy, but what does that say about the defense? And if a guy just is locked up every single time, like that's great for the defense, but what does it say about the offense? That's one where you saw positives from both guys, and Pickett has been in the mix. We talked about DJ Pickett last week and just how impressed that a lot of folks are with him, and Mansour Lane, certainly one of them. But I thought that was one of the better reps that we saw. So as far as the pass catchers against the DBs, I've seen some good things from the defensive backs. Deshaun Spears made a great play running stride for stride with Bauer Sharp and knocked away a crossing route that was a really nice job in coverage. Joel Rogers, another safety, got a hand on a ball that was intended for Xavier Thomas. It was a good play there. I mentioned Pickens' play. The one time that the offense, it was a clear rep that was just, whoa, that was a domination. Xavier Thomas ran a double move in the red zone against Javian Toviano and just left him in the dust and was wide open. Nussmeier hit him very easily. I thought that Garrett Nussmeier had a pretty nice day as well. He was in the 7-for-7 portion. He was 5 of 6 in the middle of the field. Then they went to the red zone, and that's where things got the clamps got put on LSU's receivers to an extent in the red zone. And I like to see that because I was sick and tired of going out there the last 2 years and watching LSU's offense score a touchdown on every single rep in the red zone. I mean, it was just pitch and catch for 2 years. And this time, LSU, the defensive players did a good job. The first rep they were in the red zone, Nussmeier scrambled so long that they blew the play dead. There was an incompletion to Aaron Anderson. They had double coverage there. There was a touchdown, but it was tipped by the LSU defense, and Trey'Dez Green made a play on a tip drill. There was a great touchdown throw from Garrett Nussmeier into a tight window to Barry and Brown in the middle of the end zone, which was a great throw and catch. Chris Hilton just dropped one in the corner. It did hit his hands. It would have been a really good play, but he did a good job to get open on that play. So there were times where the defensive backs made their presence known. There were times where LSU made some big plays through the air. The other piece to this on the offense that certainly bears mentioning is Josh Thompson. And Josh Thompson was out at practice for the first time since the media has been allowed to observe, and he was working at right tackle. He was with the twos exclusively and working at tackle. The other chess piece on the offensive line has been Braylon Moore. I had not seen DJ Chester take a rep at guard in the first week and a half of spring. He did take some reps at right guard for LSU with Braylon Moore at center, both in a run game period and in the 11-on-11 they did a little bit later. So you're seeing both DJ Chester and Braylon Moore take reps at the center position. I would still feel like Braylon Moore is going to be the center, but DJ Chester's repping a ton at center throughout the spring. So maybe that's because he knows where to be and they're going with the veterans early and they'll see kind of how things shake out later. Or maybe they really still like him there. But I kind of figured that Chester would be at guard. He did work there a little bit, but Braylon Moore was with the second team and then mixed in with the first team at center. Let's see if there's anything else that I saw. Oh, it was in my practice report. Tamarcus Cooley was not seen at practice. However, he did post on social media. It looked like he was at some sort of funeral service there, so that certainly would make some sense. And then the quote-unquote, and I use air quotes here because some guys were not at practice and you're sometimes looking at some other combinations variably. But the first 11 on defense, Jamari Butler and Patrick Payton on the ends, with Amon Bro and Dominic McKinley at tackle, West Weeks and Devon Keys linebacker, DJ Pickett and Michael Turner at corner, Austin Osbury at nickel, and then you had Deshaun Spears and Joel Rogers at safety. I did not see Ashton Stamps out there, standing to reason that he would probably be in that mix. But that's the look at the first defense, although we know that that's not a ton to look at in the spring. They're rotating a lot of guys in and out. So it's kind of a comprehensive look at a lot of things that I saw on Saturday out on the Ponderosa. LSU's back at it tomorrow. Joe Sloan will meet with the media tomorrow, so we'll hope to have some of that sound ready for you on tomorrow's show. Our Monday shows are brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Come back with Auctioneer's Dr. Jeremy Burnham when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Coming to the end of hour number one here on this Monday. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products on Mondays. We do this every couple of weeks. It's time for Sports Health, presented by Auctioneer Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. And for that segment, every single time we go to our guy, Dr. Jeremy Burnham. He's the medical director of sports medicine and the section head of orthopedic surgery over at Auctioneer. He joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Dr. Burnham, thanks for the time. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing very well. When we spoke, talking to get ready for this segment today, one of the things that stood out to me was the preventative aspects of what y'all do, trying to be proactive in front of injuries. And we're talking about ACLs in this sense. You mentioned that your team presented some research on injury prevention tests that could potentially help high schoolers who may be at a greater risk. Can you kind of go into some detail on that?
Yeah, that's right, Hunt. So, a big part of what we do, and obviously one of the most rewarding things, I think, in sports medicine is when you get to watch an athlete get back out to their sport and kind of triumph over adversity. But certainly as you watch that process over and over again, you realize that it sure would be great if we could keep some of these things from happening at all. And so several years ago, our research team got together and talked about ways that we could maybe make an impact and maybe identify some of these athletes that are at higher risk for injury. And so we put together a research study and went through all the process to make that happen and did a lot of testing. And we basically worked with a team of people and developed a test that's a inexpensive, very easy to perform test, but it helps us identify people that would be at a higher risk of injury during their season. And so specifically, our research showed that for high school athletes, when we do this test, which takes about 2 minutes to do, that it actually helps us pick out the people that have a 4 or 5 time higher risk of lower extremity injury during their subsequent school season. And we actually were able to go to the Louisiana Orthopedic Association meeting in New Orleans last week, and our team was picked as one of the presentations, and we got to present some of that data. And so I think we're really excited about that, just something that could make an impact if we can pick out some of these athletes ahead of time and maybe make some, changes, some interventions to how they do things that could cut back on injury risk. I think that would be huge.
I'm a big Chicago Cubs fan, and one of the things that Theo Epstein said when he was the general manager of the Cubs, they were talking about what's the next cutting edge of baseball. And he said, if you could figure out who's at risk for injury, you could be way ahead of the curve. Is that something, the stuff that you're working on? I know that when athletes go to the NFL Combine, they're going through all the medical tests. Is this the kind of thing that they would evaluate when you're sinking millions of dollars into somebody? You want to know if they're probably at more risk of getting hurt, even if there hasn't been an injury history?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and there are a lot of different tests that are out there, and we're fortunate at our new sports medicine facility at Elite. We have some markerless motion capture equipment, and a lot of really fancy equipment that's accessible to all of our athletes. And there's pretty good data on those things and being able to pick out people that have altered movement patterns and things like that put them at injury risk. But what was really unique about this test was we wanted something that, you could train somebody in just a few minutes with minimal equipment to go out and maybe do in their training room or maybe their field house, at their own school all across the state of Louisiana or really anywhere. And they could deploy that test and they could identify those patients or those athletes on their own. And so that was really the spirit of this, is how do we take some of that technology and some of the things that maybe everybody doesn't have access to what's at the combine or some of the fancier testing out there, and how do we make it deployable and accessible to everybody? So, but you're right. There's a lot of research and a lot of interest in trying to pick out people that may be more susceptible. And certainly if you can do some kind of intervention that keeps them from getting injured, that's a big deal, both in that person's life and then in professional sports from a financial standpoint as well.
When you talk about like ACL, PCL injuries to the knee, I honestly have never even thought about this, but I got the right person on to ask. Are these injuries, when it's a tear, like is that something that happens progressively over time, or is it one thing that happens that makes it go? Is you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, totally. That's a great question. And there are a lot of things in orthopedics that happen just from like attritional wear and over, but most of the time for an ACL or PCL injury in an athlete, it's something that just happens at one point. And there are a lot of things that go into it. And the ACL or the PCL can be completely healthy. The player, like if you go and look and watch NFL players that have torn their ACL and you watch the play that's happening, it's usually a play that they have done thousands or tens of thousands of times. And so it's really difficult to pick out, well, why did their knee move a certain way that one play that made them tear their ACL? And so there have been a lot of studies, like we've broken down video and slow motion and really been able to identify specific movement or specific positions of the knee that make the ACL or the PCL more likely to be injured. And then the key is trying to figure out, can you identify that in the injury screening? And if you can you train the athlete and their neuromuscular system to kind of avoid what we call risky knee patterns, basically. And that's what's really, really difficult. And even with an elite athlete who's never had a history of knee injury, you see them out there on Monday nights and on Saturdays, it still happens. So we haven't perfected it, but there's a lot of effort into trying to do that.
I know you were invited as a speaker alongside Dr. James Andrews at the State Physical Therapy Association in New Orleans. I'm hearing the words Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, these critical factors. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was awesome. So the State Physical Therapy Association does a meeting every spring where they focus on sports medicine, and I was fortunate enough to be a speaker at it, and Dr. Andrews was there, and he has just got a wealth of wisdom and knowledge built up about sports medicine. When I was in college and in med school and thinking that I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor at some point in my life when I grew up, it was always Dr. Andrews that you were thinking about, because he really set the standard so high. So I had a good time just catching up with him and talking with him through the partnership that he's had with Ochsner. I get to see him more often. But every time I'm around him, I learn something new. And then I had the opportunity to talk about, ACL injuries. And when we talk about ACL injuries, there's so many different factors we can analyze. But I kind of leaned on, I heard Nick Saban on Ryan Clark's podcast talking about the 3 critical factors. And I've read that he wrote that before, 3 critical factors for recruiting. So he talks about all these different things that you can analyze for a recruit. But at the end of the day, there were 3 things at each position that he calls as critical factors that athlete has to have for him to recruit them. And I think the same thing is the case in ACL injury. And so we talked about that from a surgical standpoint, the 3 different things that we felt were really crucial from a surgical and rehab standpoint to have success. And then we had a great panel afterwards and, had a lot of experts kind of weighing in. So a great discussion and collaboration on ACL care.
Dr. Burnham, we appreciate the time so much. Let you get back to work. We'll talk in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thanks, Hunt.
That is Dr. Jeremy Burnham from over at Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute. We know that sports injuries can be unpredictable, but one situation you can protect yourself from is muscle cramping. One of the first things you can do to aid in recovery and to avoid muscle cramping is to stretch prior to and at the end of your activity. If you're not drinking enough fluids, that can also lead to muscle cramps, so be sure to stay hydrated. We know the heat is coming down here in South Louisiana. If you'd like to learn more about sports injury prevention and treatment, visit ochsner.org/BRortho. That's ochsner.org/BRortho. We appreciate Dr. Burnham for giving us a little bit of time. I had never really thought about the fact that if like you could be working towards an ACL tear, it's just one of those things. And that's just the worst 3 letters you can hear when you're talking about football, talking about basketball, because that's going to be a significant amount of time out. And I think about that a lot with Theo Epstein, because and I mentioned it with Dr. Burnham there. Like the frontier that everybody was talking about there was Moneyball, and then it was the analytics and the spin rates and stuff, and everybody's kind of caught up to all that now. Everybody's kind of got the same deal. But Theo Epstein said if you could get in front of like making sure that your pitchers were at less risk for a UCL tear, make sure you had less injury risk, like you would be way ahead of the curve. And that's the stuff that Dr. Burnham and the team over at Ochsner and thousands of MDs nationwide are trying to look into every single day. And we're fortunate here in Baton Rouge to have such an incredible team, such great facilities there. That's a great resource here in Baton Rouge, and we appreciate Dr. Burnham for coming on every couple of weeks and chatting injuries with us. Missed any of hour number 1? You can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, review, get our content in front of as many folks as you can. We certainly do appreciate that. Open the show with 30 straight minutes talking LSU baseball, what I liked, what I did not like over the weekend. A little spring football report there. In hour number 1 as well. You can find that at Hunt on LSU on YouTube. In hour 2, we got plenty to do. We're going to talk some Saints. Quinn Ewers, is that worth a look? Corey Chest and a host of others in the transfer portal. All that coming up after sports.
The Hunt Palmer Show.